got Willie, and do we have the other microphone? I know y'all said Eric has it. Where's Eric? Do you know where the other microphone is? Well, do you want to drop that down for one of them to grab it, or do you want to come downstairs and give it to him? Don't you mess that up. Woo! They were going to blame that on me if they dropped it and broke it, weren't they? Edwin said I could do it. All right. There we go. Okay. Encouraging one another. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight, like encouraging people to throw microphones around. Encourage one another. We are, for our guests, just so you know, we are going through a lesson book. Tonight is the last lesson, Build Up One Another by Wilson Adams. And so tonight's lesson that we started on Sunday, Encourage One Another, that's what we're going to be taking a look at there. Let's just go ahead and say a prayer, and we'll jump in here and get started with the discussion that we want to have. And hopefully some of the folks who told us good stories on Sunday night will trickle in here as we continue on, and we'll be able to continue that discussion. Come on in, guys. We're going to say a prayer here in just a second. Come on in. Come on in, come on in, come on in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and say a prayer. God, thank you so much for the day you've given us. Thank you for this time that our brothers and sisters, we can get together here and have our Bible classes. Pray that you would be with those who are teaching, that we will present things that are beneficial and help all of us become more like your Son. Help us specifically in our class tonight as we consider the talk of encourage one another, that we might learn how to better build one another up, comfort one another, encourage one another, strengthen one another, and that we can incorporate the things that we've learned and talked about throughout this entire quarter, and we can be a stronger family, a stronger congregation, that we can bring glory to you in better ways that magnify your name and help us draw people into the family. It's through your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. By the way, as I said, this is our last class of the quarter, and on Sunday night's class, we will be starting our special session, and our special session this time is going to be on stewardship. We have different folks from within the congregation who are going to be presenting lessons on various aspects of stewardship. That's going to start on Sunday night, and we'll go through the month of August. The last two class sessions, there will be a presentation made by some of the deacons, and then the very last class session, so the second to last will be some presentation made by the deacons. The last one will be a singing at the end of the month, so we're going to be doing that. So in other words, really for you guys, it's no different, because on Sunday night when it's class time, where are y'all going to be? You're going to come right in here. And all those ladies who just left, they'll be coming back in here on Sunday night. All the teens will be in here, and we'll all be in here together for the month of August. So let's look forward to that. Encourage one another. Our theme verse for this lesson is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11. Therefore, encourage one another and build one another up just as you are doing. As we've gone through this quarter, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of one another. Of course, the overarching heading is that we're supposed to love one another. And as Brother Adams has presented this material, every step along the way, it's been something subordinate to that idea of loving one another. Then we moved into the idea of being members of one another and being devoted to one another and preferring one another in honor and being in the same mind with one another and accepting one another and admonishing one another and serving one another and bearing one another's burdens, bearing with one another, submitting to one another. All of these responsibilities we have to one another, and wrapping up here now with the idea of bringing encouragement to one another. On Sunday night, we talked a little bit about discouragement, the things that discourage. We recognize that there are a lot of things that the enemy brings against us, sometimes from within the family, sometimes from without the family. And I really appreciated as Joe brought up the idea that our English word courage, this I didn't know. That the word cœur, I guess, what did you say, French, Joe? Is that French for heart? So looky there, I didn't know that. So disheartening, enheartening, building up the heart or diminishing the heart of the person. And so we're wanting to build up that heart. And so what we did, we talked a little bit about the disheartening, the discouraging, And then we just asked folks to share stories. I hope you read the lesson, some good stuff in the lesson, could be helpful to you, kind of some rules and guidelines for encouragement. I think that would be fantastic. But I really thought that what would really help us is if we just spent some time talking about your experiences, our experiences, things that encouraged us, and what those kind of things would be that did encourage us. And we heard some really great stuff. I guess I'd just go ahead. I just wanted to start, just in case there was somebody who really wanted to share some experience where you were encouraged, and we ran out of time on Sunday night. I'm not going to give a whole lot of time unless you guys start talking, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Was there anybody who said, oh, there was something I wanted to share that was really meaningful that you didn't get to share on Sunday night? Or if you weren't here and you had wanted to share something, get your hand way up there. We got some microphones that'll help you out. Right there in the back with Connie.
Tim and I lived in Central Ohio. It's where we were married, where our kids were born. It was the beginning of our life together, and we spent a great deal of time there. The church was not in very good shape, and a lot of really bad and sad things happened. We had the opportunity to leave. Actually, Tim was teaching. I was home with the kids at the time, and he was laid off, and so we had to look for a job, and there was nothing in the area. So we found a job over in the eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, northern West Virginia area, where those three states come together, and the Ohio River runs through it. So we were there for 5 years, and having come from a very disheartening place, the people at the congregation at Tomlinson Run were so good to us. They built us up in a way that we had no real idea what it was going to be for. I mean, we knew why they were doing it and appreciated it so much, but we didn't understand at that time why we needed the kind of building up that they did for us. And that was because we went to Delaware, and there were no churches in the whole state. And so we had to find some place to worship. We ended up worshiping just by ourselves sometimes, but we did reach out, and most of the congregations that were faithful and upright, right with God, were about 2 hours away. So that got to be kind of a burden after a while, and we kind of attached ourselves with a congregation in Exton, Pennsylvania, and they came down and helped us do some door knocking. And we were able, because of the encouragement at Tomlinson Run and because of the encouragement in the three congregations that we found about 2 hours away from us, able to establish a congregation. And they're still there and doing well. They've got a localized preacher now. They're about 30 strong the last time I heard. And they just keep doing what needs to be done. And I don't know that if we'd come from Central Ohio straight to Delaware, I don't know if we would have been able to do what was needed to be done there.
Okay.
And so that encouragement really saved our spiritual life in many ways.
Very good. Very good. Anybody else?
You know, over the last several years, the devil has really gone after my family, and there's been times that he's been able to discourage us. But when it comes right down to it, the congregation here, and I'm going to mention some specifics, specifically the elders. We did a FaceTime, Skype video with all of the elders, and they prayed over my entire family. I'm going to get a little bit more specific. Tim Fannin has really taken my family, a hold of my family, and has really been there. We are constantly in communication with him, and the devil's not winning. We're getting more encouragement than the discouragement that the devil's trying to present before us. And that really says something about the congregation here, says something about the eldership here, says something about Tim Fannin. And he's always referring to my family as heroes. And I just publicly, I want him to know that he's my hero, because he really has been an encouragement to our family.
Very good. Anyone else? All right, but going. Okay. On Sunday night, when we got finished, we said that here's what we were going to do tonight. So I appreciate getting to hear a few more stories. That was very helpful. What we wanted to do was consider the things that we heard in these stories. And I know some of you didn't get to hear a lot of the stories that were told, or any of the stories that were told on Sunday night, but you've heard a couple of examples tonight, those kinds of things. I want us to take a few minutes, however long. And honestly, if we get talking and this takes the rest of the class, I'm okay with that. I got some other things that I'm willing to talk about on this, but if we're learning things from what we said, I'm good with this taking the rest of the class. But I want us to think about just what we learned about encouraging one another from hearing people talk about being encouraged. And I'm just going to tell you, because I know some of you are thinking it, but you're probably afraid to hear it, or probably afraid to say it in front of me. Here's one of the things I learned. For all of you who are here, did you all recognize that not one single person said, you know, there's this sermon I heard. Did anybody else notice that? Not one single story was, I went to the assembly and there was this sermon, and this sermon was just so encouraging, changed my life. And actually, none of the stories were, I was involved in a particular Bible class. Now, guys, obviously we're supposed to be together, and I do know that we find encouragement from those things, and I do know we find instruction from those things. Please do not hear what I just said and say, oh, you're right, I'm never going to listen to a sermon again. Oh, you're right, I'm never going to come to Bible class again. No, don't take that. But it was interesting to me that every one of the stories about encouragement happened outside of that. The ones that people said, I want to share this was meaningful, this was really helpful, it was, all those ones were outside of that. I think we need to be thinking about that. So that's one of the things I learned. So, all right, Derek, what was something you learned?
One of the things one thread that really runs through a lot of this thing is the fact that in order to encourage one another, that we have to take the time to know one another. Okay. And most of these stories, that's one thing about it, is that the things that people did to encourage them is because they had to know you to do the things they did. As Brother said, like Tim, the only way he could help the Fosters is to take the time to know the Fosters and the elders. The way they took the time to know the Fosters. So they were able to help them and to encourage them. And so unless we take the time to know each other and not just saying hello, sitting down, talking, breaking bread, fellowshipping, true fellowship with one another. And that's one of the things I've just kind of noticed, that a lot of that has happened.
Getting to know one another, right down here with Stephen. So it's going to be hard to encourage if I don't know what people are going through, if I don't know what impacts them, if I don't know where they need encouragement. I got to take time to get to know folks. All right, Stephen.
I think another theme that runs through these is many of these efforts of encouragement were not heavy lifts by those encouraging,
okay,
but they made a huge difference to the ones being encouraged. Now, some of them some of them were larger efforts than others, but a lot of these were just Christians being looking, knowing their brethren, and being willing to serve.
Yeah, for those of you who weren't here on Sunday night, we heard stories that stretched from, as John was telling us about a time when he was struggling, and the thing that encouraged him was somebody able to say, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And that was encouraging. And then it stretched all the way to somebody who, when they were a child, Seth telling us about the trailer burning down and the congregation and the people in the congregation gathering around them and all the different things that happened to help his family in that scenario. So, I mean, we've got this huge span of things. And yet, when it comes spiritually, you take a young Christian who is expressing being overwhelmed and being able to hear from an older Christian, I know what you mean, and that's the thing that helps him stay on track. That ends up having kind of the same impact as when I was a kid, there was this terrible, awful thing that happened to my family, and the congregation came around us, and that's what's kept me on track. And you see, the result of helping someone stay faithful. So I really appreciate that. Did you raise your hand, Cameron? Right here with Cameron.
Another thread that's kind of tied all these stories together is that no one has mentioned a time where they've been at their spiritual peak. No one's really mentioned, like, oh yes, I was at this strong point, and then this person said this encouragement to me, and that just pushed me further and further. No, everyone felt like dirt when they got the encouragement that they needed.
Okay.
But that was the point. They got the encouragement that was needed to keep them going, to maintain their spiritual life, to keep them moving on to the next day. And so you need to, this kind of goes back to Derek's point of knowing the congregation around you. Just, you have to know when something is wrong, and that is the critical point when they need that encouragement.
All right, very good. Yeah, the issue is over here with Paul. Over here, are you raising your hand? Yeah. When do we need encouragement the most? When we're discouraged, when we're down. It's helpful. Hey, I do just want to point this out. I know, and nothing against everybody who's saying a theme that's running through it, but I know some of you have now heard, oh, they're talking about themes that run through all of it. Doesn't necessarily have to be that. You may have picked up something from just one statement that was made, and it'll be okay. Share that with us because we need to learn that too. So go ahead.
I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know the motives of the people who were being encouragers, but at least from the way the stories were portrayed, nobody chose to be an encourager with an expectation that they were going to be owed something later.
Okay.
And I think sometimes, we hesitate because we're concerned about giving up something of value, and whether that's time, whether that's money, whether that's resources, and we just have to realize that if there's an opportunity to serve, it may mean I'm going to give this person money, and they're not going to be able to ever pay that back. And we need to be able to move into it with that expectation that if we give somebody a ride, that it's not going to be, okay, hey, my car broke down, I need you to come get me because you owe me. And so it was a selfless act.
All right, so sincerity, no ulterior motives. Serving, encouraging for the joy of serving and encouraging. Very good. What else did you learn? Somebody. There you go.
If I can expound on that a little bit, it's not often, well, a lot of times it's not just the person trying to encourage somebody else, it's just being somebody's friend. I don't know how many times I've been encouraged by something that was said that wasn't even meant to be encouraging, it was just sharing. So, and we don't, this applies to everybody, not just those who want to go encourage. We all need to have relationships with each other as Christians.
Okay.
And even if you're shy or inward, you don't like to go make a lot of friends, get one or two people that you visit with occasionally or that you pray with once every other week or something, and it's amazing the lives it'll change.
Good point. Encouragement often just comes under the guise of being a friend. Being the one who's there listening, being the one who's there commenting, weeping with, rejoicing with. I think that's a really good point. What else have we learned? What did we learn about encouraging one another from these stories? Eli?
What it seemed to me that a lot of sorry to keep going on the keeping with the theme of
Oh, you're allowed to
themes,
say
I
theme.
apologize.
See, you know, see how things get. Here, I was so worried that folks were going to say, "Oh, I have to come up with a theme," that I wanted to comment on that, and now he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry that I said another theme." No, you can do it either way. If you saw a theme, comment on that. If it was just one little thing, comment on that. Go
Okay,
ahead,
thank you.
Eli.
That was encouraging. I appreciate that.
I do what I can. I do what I can. Eli, just say whatever's in your heart, brother.
Okay.
You know I love you. Mostly.
Hey, all love, all love. What a lot of these stories had in common was, yes, there's intention behind a lot of these actions and a lot of this encouragement. But what it seemed to me is a lot of these just were how people were and how they've built up character every single day throughout the years. It means I'm choosing today, right now, that I'm just going to be encouraging. And you're going to wake up, and maybe some days are harder than others to be encouraging. But after days and years and so much time goes by with you choosing to be an encourager for the Lord, to your brothers, to your sisters, developing relationships, building all these other things that encouragement requires, you're going to find that, that's what a lot of these stories came from. It wasn't that, this was a one-off type of, scenario. It took intention, and that it was intention that was worked at. It was, I'm starting now, and I'm going to continue to try and be an encourager forever. It's not that I'm going to start when I'm 30 or when I have money or when, whatever happens in my life, I'm going to then be an encourager. It's hard work, but then that's who you become. And so in that sense, it's easy. So that's what I saw in a lot of the stories.
Yeah, so it's not a quota. Hey, I got my one in for this year, right down here with Amy, Willie, right down here with Amy. It's not I got my quota, got my one a week in, and now I'm good, as if I'm checking a box. It's growing and letting that be our lives. I have to tell you. So let me just, I want to add in a story now. So we're going back to the previous question, just from, it's not that one. I don't want you to see ahead. Back to this one. I want to share something, because honestly, with Eli talking right there, it just made me think. I told a story of when I was encouraged once, but I think maybe encouragement by proxy. And actually, Eli talking made me think about this, because I will tell you, one of the things that's encouraged me is seeing people who have encouraged my kids. And Eli is a good friend with my son Ethan. And I know Eli has been an encouragement to Ethan. And I think about Daniel Chandler, who was one of Ethan's best friends and became a good friend when we showed up here. And there was some issues from previous relationships and other churches, and being able to come in and find a friend like Daniel. And then I don't think he's in here tonight, but Matt Johnson was a huge encouragement. And I'll just tell you, seeing people encourage my kids encourages me. So I guess since we're actually on a different question, but I'm the teacher, so I can do what I want. The lesson to learn from that is recognize that the encouragement that you offer to somebody it rarely stops with that person. So keep that in mind.
I was thinking about how in every scenario there are two parties. There's the person who's doing the encouraging, and then there's the person who is being encouraged. And I think sometimes we get into a very independent mindset where we don't want to burden others. We don't want to feel like we're portraying ourselves as weak or unable to handle something. We don't want to feel or appear vulnerable, and we don't allow those opportunities to come up. I don't know that I have a solid point to go on with that, but I felt like in a lot of the stories, there was kind of this like culture of encouragement where it was understood that this is what we do for each other. This is part of who we are, like as our core being, our makeup of who we are, kind of like what Eli was saying.
Yeah, so we want to make this a culture. We want to make this a congregational culture. We want this to be a thing that says this is what we're about. We're about encouraging one another. We're about being there for one another, holding up one another. Again, sometimes it may just be, hey, I'll be there. And we'll just sit here and we don't have to say anything, but I'll be there. And sometimes it may be much, 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 much bigger than that. I think about the passage, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. It's just, I'm going to be there and I'm going to share in it. And the encouragement that that can provide. What else? Anybody else? What did you learn by the things we've said, the stories we heard about encouragement?
So I think this is like my first time to ever comment in class, so you know it's got to be something important.
Got to be big. Got to be big.
So I was actually in the nursery last time, so I didn't get to share my story, so I'm going to share mine and then also say something else about it.
And since she's the wife of the teacher, she gets to do that, just so you guys know.
So it's kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different things that I've heard, but so when we lived in Beaumont, Texas, and I had Tessa, I didn't know a thing about having babies. And I didn't know that when you had a baby, you needed food brought to you. I didn't know how helpful it was to have somebody come and hold your baby so that you could take a nap. I did not know how important it was that when you actually had a second child and your husband is the preacher, for somebody to come sit with you and help you with your toddler so you could go out with your baby. And we had all of that, so when you know better, you do better. And so ever since then, I try really hard. Those women do not know how deeply they affected me and how much they influenced me and encouraged me, because I didn't have parents I didn't have any family that lived close by. So all that kind of help that I got was purely from the women in the congregation. And so it's kind of my little personal mission to pay it forward. Paul talked about not having it paid back, not that expectation of paying back. But I love the idea of it being paid forward through the generations. And all those women that helped me, they were probably helped. I know they were helped by women before them and before them and before them. And so it's a very beautiful thought to me to think about that encouragement like a wave or a chain going down from generation to generation to generation. And hopefully my daughters, they have seen that, and hopefully they will continue that chain and pay it forward.
Yeah, so talking about that, I'm, again, from small to large, because sometimes it was, hey, you know what? Yeah, I will. I'll sit with you at church and I'll hold the baby and you can go take the older child out. But I'll also say, when the second child came along, Ethan, the day Ethan was born, I received a call from my stepmom that my dad had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And, what are we going to do? And I got to tell you, within, I don't know how many hours it was, people in the congregation had collected money. We had a plane ticket for me to go home. And somebody had invited Marita over with a newborn and a 2-year-old to stay with them for, I don't remember how long I was gone, a couple days. That's encouraging. It's encouraging. From small to big. That's the kind of people Christians are. All right, anything else that you've learned? This goes along, I guess, with the lesson that I had, that I mentioned earlier, but I guess I just wanted to ask this question for us to think about it. When and where? In most all of these stories, probably all of them. In fact, I think it was all of them. In most, if not all the stories we heard, when and where did the encouraging take place? And obviously I'm speaking generically, not specifically. Somebody's trying to read my mind. I appreciate that. I know this is one of those read Edwin's mind questions.
I thought that outside of church, like we're doing the things we're not just coming on Wednesday and encouraging people. It's happening when we're not here too.
Yes, thank you. See? I'm not sure what that means about you that you can read my mind. But yeah, that's kind of the thing I'm driving home. Again, not to say what we're doing here, that what we're doing here has the purpose that it has. We need to worship God together, and that encourages us. We need what worshiping to God together provides. And if what we decided to do was just be a group of people that try to uplift one another's spirits throughout the week, and we weren't gathering together to worship God together, we would not be what we need to be, and we wouldn't become what we need to become. If we weren't taking time to study God's Word and know more about it together, we wouldn't be what we need to be. But I want us to see this other side, that all this stuff we've talked about, I don't think one single story said, I was at the church building one day and somebody said this thing. And I have to tell you, I guess the reason this stood out to me, and I don't want to, I don't know, I just thought question 3, one mark of a great church is the length of time brethren stay, visit, and talk after the worship is concluded. I mean, I agree with that. I think that's a powerful thing. If the assembly was over and everybody just left, probably that other stuff wouldn't be happening either. But the idea that where encouragement happens in the main between disciples is when we show up, and you know what we're supposed to do is go through our acts of worship and now make sure to stay for 30 minutes so everybody gets the right amount of encouragement. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Encouragement happened actually away. Encouragement happened in the life that we were walking through. Encouragement happened in the events of doing things together, of being together, of listening to one another. Certainly there were things that happened that were big, that were very public, we've made an announcement and now the church is going to act in a certain way, and I know those things happened, but most of the stories were just about the interpersonal conversations, talks, service that happens away from here. Did y'all pick that up? I mean, if I saw some of this, that would help. Are we together tonight? Are we all? Okay, just making sure. All right, Seth gives me the thumbs up. I appreciate that. All right. I just want us to think about that. So, here's this. Considering the answer to that question, the one we just answered, what are we going to have to do to have opportunities to encourage one another? Rich?
Well, this is more intentional than what you're probably wanting, but we do have this house-to-house reorganization, trying to get that going again this Saturday. And maybe if we want to have more opportunities outside of this building, we'll take advantage of the opportunities that house-to-house provides.
Sure. That is not more specific. This wasn't actually supposed to be an advertisement for House to House, but I was going to mention it, and so I'm glad you did. We have a plan that we try to help people develop relationships like this so that encouragement can be more readily available. And this Saturday, what time? 9 to 10:30, there will be a meeting here for folks who want to know more. And it's not just in case you were wondering, it's not just for leaders and hosts. That's what we've done. We've done that before, but this is for anyone who wants to know more about it, anybody who wants to get more involved, anybody who just wants to connect and learn more. That's going to be Saturday morning at 9 to 10:30. I'll be there on time. I'll mark it on my calendar between now and then. So yeah, there's that specific. All right, but maybe more generic, more general. If we want, considering what we've said about where all that happened, if we're going to have opportunities to encourage one another, what are we going to have to do? Right down here with Holly.
Since she's spoken to the mic, I know she's back there. So, one time I was at y'all's house and we were sharing some things, and I had shared some things that just don't go around telling everybody. And Rita said to me, I wouldn't have known those things just looking at you. And that has resonated with me. Like, there's an element of me that's like, great, like, people know your life falls apart from the outside. But there's an element of we all have to not be scared of saying, my life falls apart sometimes. My life falls apart quite often. And I get up and I put on my makeup and I fix my hair and I prance down the middle of the aisle 15 minutes late to church, but I do it. But for other people to know that it's okay that your life falls apart. And so it's that being open and not being ashamed of the times that your life has fallen apart, for others to find encouragement in that and the fact that you came through it. And I grew up kind of at the mindset of, oh, keep the family secrets, keep them in the family. Don't let anybody know about how we let the crazy hang out. But like, it's those elements of sharing and having the opportunities to share that, where people then can look and go, okay, they pulled it back together. Life got back together. So,
Yeah. Openness in real relationship. I think that's a helpful thing. Oh, thank you. I'm certain she took it that way. If not, I'll hear later and I'll call you. Seth?
Sorry, I'm going to jump back to what the topic when Mallory was talking, something that happened yesterday at work that I just kind of remembered and I'd been thinking about to remember to say. So I'd had a conversation with a coworker, and this is, right, how much of an example of God can you be in traffic? Not very much. You spend 8 hours a day with the people you work with. Those are most likely going to be the people not only that you can influence one time, but you're going to see them all the time, and those are the people that you can continue to keep that relationship, because I've learned the hard way. You can baptize as many people as you want, you can bring as many people to church as you want, but if you're not staying connected with them, they tend to fall away. I'd had this conversation with him multiple times, but he was moving to Germany, and then all of a sudden he came back after I came back from baby leave, and he's like, hey, I'm not going to Germany. And I was like, oh, awesome. He's like, also, the sermon that Edwin was preaching was really good, and he started talking about different things in your sermon, and I was like, okay, I need to remember to tell him about Text Talk, but
Please do.
But that was just like, out of the blue, he starts the conversation and just starts like talking ideas about different things that you had preached about. And I had no idea that he had really taken it to heart, and he had really been, looking up videos and all those things. And he hadn't even told me for the last 2 weeks, so that was just a great opportunity. So it's another one of those examples where you don't have to stand up on the street corner with a sign and proclaim God. Just talking with people might change things for him.
Yeah. And the thing that I picked up there in what you said that still ties to the question we're asking now is you were talking about the people that I'm spending all this time with. The guy in the car next to me. I mean, it's true that if he makes me mad because he's a joker, which there are some people like that who are driving out there, if I'm going to make a display, he's going to know it's going to be discouraging. He's probably not going to notice if I control myself, because he's not paying attention to that. But the person at work that I'm spending time with, they are picking up on those things. I want us to see here, as we're considering this question, that if we recognize that it was actually time away from here, we got to know each other, we've got to be open and honest, we've got to spend time together. We've got to spend time together. Right down here with Charlie. Got to spend enough time that when you see them in class, you can actually remember their name.
So I guess two thoughts bringing these together. One is thinking of James and asking God for wisdom. So that's something that we need to do to be able to encourage one another. And then I guess thinking too about our VBS class and being fearless. Not being afraid to encourage people to speak the truth in love, whether that's, like what the elders instructed us to do with Colin, to build him up, to, tell him what he has done that's good, encourage him in that way. Not to say that we're ignoring, things that he needs to work on, but that's, yours and Andrew's job. But also to not be afraid That was kind of mentioned earlier when people are going through something difficult, when they're talking about the messiness of life, to not be afraid to listen to that, to understand that, and to be able to sit in that with them, and then also bringing it back to the wisdom to encourage them, to be able to encourage them, to lift them out of that.
All right. Think about this verse. Oh, go ahead, real quick.
I have one too. So pertaining to how do we make opportunities to encourage other people, I think that sometimes, if someone's not in the same physical location as you, if it's not happening immediately in front of you, it's really easy to kind of go about your business and just move on with your life. But I feel that if you're really, you kind of feel in your heart that, hey, I should talk to this person, or it'd be beneficial for them, for me to help them, maybe reach out. So
Technology is great today. We've got these opportunities that I don't want to replace face-to-face, but yeah, I have a phone. I can call. I can text. Some great things here. All right, I want us to think about this verse and a half. Day by day, this is Acts chapter 2. The church has just been started. First Christians are together, and here's what it says about them. Day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. I thought about this passage, and the question that I wanted to ask, where in this passage do you think was the greatest amount of encouragement, like we've been talking about in these two class periods, accomplished? Where in this passage was that happening? Say it louder. Yeah. Breaking bread in their homes. I think the King James says from house to house. This is where I was going to plug it. So we'll just put in another advertisement. Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. I'll say it again so I can remember. Breaking bread in their homes. They received their food with glad and generous hearts. What? Well, we've only got 3 minutes, so I'll just talk. One of the struggles that we have today, so in Jerusalem, they lived in a city that was all piled up on top of each other. There was a wall that went around the city. Everybody lived within, 10, 20-minute walk from one another's homes. I mean, they were just, because of the way the community was set up, the people in the church were on top of each other. And all the folks that had come in from all over were they were coming into town every day. And it made it very easy for them to be together, even though it wasn't the time of worship and study at the temple, listening to the teaching of the apostles. One of our struggles today is that all of our communities have spread out. I mean, just the way our cities have spread out. And so we have folks in this congregation 18, 20 minutes south, 18, 30, 45 minutes north. We've had people in this congregation as far as Lakeland, as far up as Brooksville, over in Odessa. Boy, okay, doing this, well, it's no wonder we don't do this very much. It takes, it's hard. But I think one of the things that we've got to be doing is really recognizing that where the encouragement takes place the most is that kind of setting. That's where the encouragement takes place the most. And I'll just, as we wrap up, I'll throw up the next verse that I wanted us to consider, and we're not going to talk about it. But above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins, and that's where we started 3 months ago. And then show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Show hospitality. The folks, and really at heart, I know we get into some technical definitions about the words potentially, but the reality is the concept of hospitality is taking somebody from the outside and bringing them to the inside. Taking folks who are not a part of the family, bringing them into the family times, the family places, the family spaces. And that's where that encouragement happens. It's actually kind of, I guess, one of my biggest regrets just about this class entirely, that there's not a lesson on that particular thing. because I think that this one is probably one of the biggest ones. But show hospitality to one another, because that's where encouragement occurs. Guys, thank you so much. I hope the class for the whole quarter has been helpful to you, encouraging to you, even though none of you, when you told your story, said, oh, this Bible class we had was very encouraging to me. But I hope you really thought it on the inside. So Sunday night, we're going to be starting our special session on stewardship, so everybody will come in here. We will stay to the back, though, so it still will be in the back part, but we'll take up all 4 sections on Sunday night. So thanks a lot, guys.